Okay, let's be real for a second. What was the absolute first thing you did when you woke up this morning? Did you take a deep breath, stretch, maybe think about your goals for the day? Or did you immediately roll over, grab your phone, and start scrolling through notifications, instantly plunging your brain into a high-speed digital world? I want you to really reflect on that for a moment, because if you're like most of us navigating today's highly stimulated environment, it was probably the latter. And that simple, almost automatic morning action, well, that is exactly why we're here today.
So welcome to today's Explainer. I am genuinely thrilled to be your guide as we dive into some incredibly eye-opening source material. We're treating this like an interactive workshop, and I'm going to give you a step-by-step tutorial to literally reset your brain chemistry. Our goal isn't just to casually chat about bad habits. No, we're going to break down the actual mechanics of the dopamine loop and hand you a proven framework for lasting fulfillment.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is the syllabus for our interactive workshop. We're going to start with escaping the distraction trap and decoding the dopamine seesaw. From there, we'll hit the 6-step action plan, rewriting your subconscious identity, the daily habits toolkit, and finally, we'll wrap up with Stoic principles for relapse.
Starting with Part 1, Escaping the Distraction Trap. I want you to take a mental note of how easily repeating the same daily routines traps us. You wake up, scroll, go to school or work, come home, and plunge straight into gaming or endless short-form videos. It traps you in this loop of passive consumption, where you just feel like a passenger in your own life. And to understand why we get so stuck, you have to look at this number. By the time we hit 35 years old, a massive 95% of who we are is a deeply ingrained subconscious program. It's this massive mix of beliefs, emotional reactions, and unconscious habits. So when you try to just stop a bad habit using your 5% conscious mind, telling yourself, I'll change tomorrow or I'll start Monday, you are literally bringing a knife to a gunfight. Changing your life isn't just about fighting urges. It's about accessing and rewriting your internal computer program. You have to change the source code.
So, Part 2, Decoding the Dopamine Seesaw. Before we change the code, we need to understand the hardware. And look, I want to completely remove any shame you might be carrying about your distractions right now. Feeling trapped by your phone or struggling to focus isn't some moral failing. It is a highly predictable chemical reaction happening right inside your brain.
And this brilliantly illustrates what's actually happening. When we hit high-stimulation activities, sugar, intense gaming, endless social feeds, we get a rapid, massive spike in dopamine. We hit the peak. But your brain is built to maintain balance, right? Homeostasis. So what goes up must come down. The catch is, it doesn't just return to normal. It drops heavily below your baseline. We call this the rot. That below baseline drop is exactly what causes the tiredness, the brain fog, and that heavy, hopeless feeling where you just want to rot in bed all day. And how do you escape that awful feeling? You reach for the phone again for another fast peak, and the seesaw swings violently all over again.
So how do we actually stop this ride? That brings us to Part 3, the 6-step action plan. This is the core curriculum of our workshop where we actively fix that dopamine baseline.
Here's the bird's eye view of the entire 6-step framework, pulled directly from our sources. We start with radical self-awareness, then move to high-quality substitution, strategic obsession, mental health hygiene, identity shifting, and relapse management. And listen, this sequential path is absolutely required to shift your brain away from instant gratification and lock it on to long-term goals. You can't skip steps here.
So the crucial point is really found in steps 2 and 3. You can't just quit a bad habit and leave a giant void in your day. You have to crowd it out. You substitute fast dopamine, those rapid spikes and devastating crashes, with slow dopamine. These are activities that give a gradual rise, demand real effort, and offer stable fulfillment. Working out, reading, building something. And step 3, strategic obsession, takes it to the next level. You find a massive goal like starting a business or a YouTube channel that demands so much of your mental bandwidth that there is literally no room left for the old addiction.
Moving to Part 4, Rewriting your subconscious identity. This is arguably the most critical part of the whole framework, Step 5, because sheer willpower will eventually run out if your self-image stays exactly the same. Take a look at the slide. Do you recognize these negative self-talk loops? I can't wake up early. I'm just an addict trying to quit. This is your old script. The source material points out something fascinating. Thoughts are the language of the brain, but feelings are the language of the body. When you tell yourself you are an addict, your body feels like an addict, and it practically forces you to act like one just to prove your brain right.
It perfectly reinforces the old destructive habit.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the new script. I am disciplined. I am a person who has their life together. When you shift your identity to someone who has their life together, the behavior follows naturally. Why? Because a person who truly believes they have their life together simply doesn't want to waste 8 hours endlessly scrolling. By changing the who, the how becomes totally automatic.
Pivoting to part 5, the Daily Habits Toolkit. These are your immediate boots-on-the-ground action items to fix the mental health hygiene we mentioned back in step 4. Consider this your workshop homework. First, 7 to 8 hours of sleep. It's non-negotiable. Sleep stabilizes that volatile dopamine baseline. Second, high-intensity exercise. It creates a massive, natural dopamine release that actually resets your receptors. Third, the cell phone jail. Seriously, put the phone in another room. The sources note that just moving it out of your line of sight drops your urges by up to 40%. Fourth, use visual cues. Keep your textbook or your project open on your desk so there's zero friction to starting. And finally, 90-minute focus blocks to train your brain to enjoy the slow dopamine of deep work.
Finally, part 6. Stoic principles for relapse. Because, let's be totally honest, quitting a habit is not a straight line. We need to equip you with some philosophical armor so that an inevitable slip-up doesn't ruin your shiny new identity.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it turns ancient philosophy into a tactical, modern weapon. Premeditatio malorum, or negative visualization. You visualize the relapse before it happens. You don't just cross your fingers and hope you'll be strong. You decide exactly what physical action you'll take the second an urge hits. Urge strikes, boom, you immediately drop and do 20 push-ups. Or you go chug a glass of ice-cold water. You prepare for failure before it happens, which completely removes panic from the equation.
You also have to internalize the Stoic concept of the dichotomy of control. This is so freeing. You cannot control the chemical urge firing off in your brain. That's just biology. Let it happen. But you need to recognize that you have 100% absolute control over your physical body. You control whether your hands actually reach out to grab the controller or open a new tab. Focus purely on your internal effort to keep your hands still, rather than fighting the uncontrollable biology of the craving.
And look, if you do slip up, please do not fall into the trap of toxic self-criticism. Beating yourself up just makes you feel terrible, which ironically triggers the urge to use the distraction to cope with feeling terrible. Instead, use the relapse debugging guide. Be a scientist about it. Analyze the data. Ask yourself logically, what was the trigger? Were you stressed or lonely? What was the environment? What was the friction? Was the app already logged in? Forgive the slip-up, learn the lesson, and add a new barrier for tomorrow.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. I want to leave you with a provocative thought, a concrete action item you can apply the very second this screen goes dark. What is one small barrier you can add to your biggest distraction today? Can you literally walk your phone into another room right now? Can you log out of that account? Please don't wait for Monday, don't wait for tomorrow. 95% of your subconscious programming is sitting there waiting to be rewritten, and it all starts with just one small barrier. Take back the wheel. Thank you so much for joining this interactive workshop, and I honestly can't wait to see how you rebuild your baseline.